Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today's episode is an anonymized question that I answered in one of my Ditcherville live Q&A sessions inside of my group coaching community. It's about how project oversight retainers work. Stay tuned. Next question. Can you say more about project oversight retainers? Who is best suited to offer them? Where do they fall price-wise in a list of proposal options versus other retainers? And when is it a bad idea to offer one? Oh, so this is going to sound familiar from the previous question. Who is best suited to offer them? So someone who has more recently transitioned from doing a thing to knowing how to do the thing and selling the knowledge, selling the know-how instead of selling the doing. So if you think of the altitudes of involvement and you've got support and maintenance at the bottom, you've got execution or building in the middle or implementation, and then at the top you've got like strategy, high-level design, positioning, those sorts of things at the top level, the more advisory things. And you're at the middle level, the execution, implementation, building level, and you're trying to get up to the strategy level, or you're starting to feel people are starting to ask you, CEOs are starting to ask you higher level questions. So not, could you build this for us, but could you help us build this? Could you teach us how to build this? Could you architect a solution and then we'll build it? So you're you're moving from that second to third level. That would be something to offer. So where maybe, oh, this is exactly how I did it. Okay, here's exactly how I did it. I used to do projects just like when I was in the firm 8 years ago. Someone would come, they say, hey, we need this thing built. I'd say, great, I'll give you, tell me all about the scope. I'd have a scope first conversation. I'd kind of try and build it in my head while we were talking. I'd map that all out later, and we had a little formula that would roughly, this many hours, this many hours, this many hours for these kinds of features. And then I'd roll that all up into an hourly estimate, and say, yeah, I think it'll be 50 grand. Could be wrong, could be 75, could be 100, I don't know, but it'll probably be about 50. And then as I got that, so that was how that worked, and all of the bad things that happened from that happened. Then it got to a point where I went solo, and my bread and butter was still building stuff. So I still did the implementation, but there was a phase at the beginning that was clearly distinct where I wouldn't be coding yet. I'd be going around interviewing stakeholders. I'd be interviewing the leadership team. I'd be making sure that we were all in alignment about what the goals were. It was a strategic phase at the beginning every time. I used to just lump that in with the hourly if I did it at all after the sales meeting. And it would just be an hourly thing. But then I started, when I went solo, I was like, this is a discrete thing. So I usually talk about it under the term road mapping now. So an interim step can be, once you're getting off of hourly, you can say, all right, I'm going to start selling roadmaps up front for whatever, 5 grand, 15 grand, 500, whatever, depends on what you're doing. Sell that independently. It has its own value proposition, even though the software is not even started to be built yet. It is a map. And smart people want a map when they're trying to take a journey. A project is like a journey, right? And it's going to be confusing and dangerous, and there's going to be dead ends and all sorts of problems. So it's really good to have a map. So the roadmap, you can create a roadmap and sell it as a thing and say, there's no lock-in here. You don't have to, I'm probably the most expensive builder out there. I'm more of an architect. I would be happy to build it for you, but I'll be the most expensive option. So we can talk about that if you want. But you could probably find someone who's much less expensive, and with this map, they'll do a good job. Or you could do it internally if they've got internal resources, or if they wanted to hire a developer or whatever the implementation is that you do, a designer or whatever, marketer. So they could hire an internal person, follow the map and do it themselves. They can hire someone cheaper and use the map to guide them along, or they can hire you for a ton of money to do it. And very often they'll just say like, nope, we just know you. We don't have the internal resources. We don't want to worry about finding someone cheaper that we don't trust. We trust you. We'll suck it up and we'll pay you. So the roadmap often turns into high ticket implementation if you want to do that. Here's what shifted for me. I didn't want to do implementation anymore, but the client still wanted me to. So in that scenario, I give them the roadmap. They're like, this is great. We have so much clarity now. We can see where we're going. We've got that feeling that we can see what's going to happen and how it's going to play out more or less. They have a lot more certainty. Could you please build it for us? And I would just say, I don't build these things anymore, but I can introduce you to some teams that you can hire yourself, or you can use this internal couple of people I met when we were talking, or you mentioned you had. They're good enough, and I will oversee the project to make sure that they follow the map. They, if we use the blueprint metaphor, they put the stuff where it's supposed to be. They use the materials they're supposed to use. They're pounding the nails where they're supposed to pound them. And you just kind of, the builder metaphor is like you're the architect and you're walking the building site where they're putting up the mansion, and you're sort of making sure, double checking, everything's on track. People aren't, doing things in a way that's going to end up bad for the client. So you're becoming an insurance policy, but it's specific to that project. Generally, projects are going to go longer. The implementation phase almost never stays on track. So you're going to want to do this on a monthly basis. And then, when the project's over, they don't need you anymore. So the end of the engagement usually coincides with the launch or soon after the launch. In terms of pricing, I didn't really price it differently. I can't give you a specific price for it, but my average price for something like this centered around like 10 grand a month, depended a little bit on if there was any travel. These days, there really doesn't need to be travel probably. So, I would think if the project if they're going to spend like $250,000 or more on the implementation with someone else, they'll probably spend 10 grand to make sure that there's not 5 extra months of implementation, or even 1 extra month of implementation. 10 grand would be if you save them 1 month of implementation is going to be 40 or 50 grand a month probably. If I'm assuming software developers, you've got maybe 2 software developers, a designer and a QA person. That's going to run you 30, 40 grand a month, or it could. So if you save them 1 month, that's worth the 10 grand. I mean, whatever, it adds up. But anyhow, that I don't think for a project that's like in the 6 figures, low to mid 6 figures, it's reasonable to have someone that's getting paid 5 figures to kind of make sure that it stays on track. And the more dangerous the project is, the riskier the project is for the client, the more they're going to want to pay someone like you to make sure that the house gets built the way that everybody planned on it getting built, and it doesn't go sideways, 6 or 12 months from now. When is it a bad idea to offer one? I think it's a bad idea to offer one. Well, they're all going to be obvious. It's a bad idea to offer one if you didn't click with the client, because you're going to be married to them for at least 3 months, probably more like 6, maybe more like 9 or 12 or 18. So you really want to click with these people. You really want that to feel like there's mutual trust, because weird things are going to happen. So you want to make sure there's mutual trust. You want to make sure you click, you like them, you laugh at the same things. Like you really want to be friends almost with these people, like the kind of person you would be friends with after the project is over. So, any red flags I would run. When is it a bad idea? Another bad idea is when, this is so obvious it's almost not worth saying, but if the implementation is too far outside of your expertise for you to really be considered or feel like an expert. So, for example, but you probably wouldn't do the roadmap in the first place if that were the case. But let's just say someone comes to you and say, hey, we really trust you. You did such a great job with my other company. Now I'm at this new company. It's this one's not PHP, or this one's not Rails, this one's not React, this one's .NET, and you have absolutely no experience with .NET. Then I'd be like, there's probably a lot of, or NetSuite or Salesforce or whatever. They're probably, in general, you're smart and you're good at what you do. But if there's a fundamental platform disconnect, you're going to have a hard time certainly operating at the level that you're used to operating at when the platform is something that you're comfortable with. But you're also going to have a hard time in any meetings where things get really technical. You're going to feel like an imposter, a serious imposter syndrome. So, it's almost silly to say, but if you don't feel like your expertise is perfectly aligned, you don't feel like you've done this a million times from Sunday and you know all the ways it can go bad, then I probably wouldn't offer it. But again, you probably wouldn't have done the roadmap in the first place. All right, hopefully that helped. If we've got follow-ups and maybe if if I use too many software development examples, and you need some specifics from a different industry, just message me in Slack afterwards. All right.